Gerbert.
Do you have a strong sense of community? Do you feel isolated without any real identity? Does your worm ever get frustrated from never feeling the touch of a woman? Hi, my name is Kitten Jones, and for most of you, I think I know the answers to these questions already. But one question does remain that I do not know the answer to. Is it your fault? Today I have brought some statistics along with me to try to illustrate the problem of male loneliness. I decided to take matters into my own hands, start taking hormone blockers, start transitioning into a woman just to make life easier. So I'm non-binary at the moment. I'm just doing a little catboy look. So please address me correctly into the comments. My pronouns are kitty, cat. Also, as you may have noticed, I went to the Shaolin Temple, became a master of the staff. So if you don't address me correctly, I will obliterate you with my newly found skill set. So yeah, you better watch your mouth, bitch. A Pew Research study from 2020 found that 51% of men aged 18 to 29 are single, compared to only 32% of women in the same bracket. This is with most men looking to date and most women not looking to date. And it's also important to mention that this data was collected pre-Modelo, and this is true for all the studies I will be bringing up today. So whatever they say, just imagine them being a lot worse. There are many other studies corroborating these findings, including the General Social Survey one, which I've talked about a lot, as well as the percentage of high schoolers who have ever dated, which dropped 30% from the 70s to 2014. So that one's probably way worse now. And what connects all these things is a significant drop, a sudden change and downward slope that happens in the Zoomer generation. This is a Generation Z problem. And this is not just about dating either. 1/5 of men admitted, keyword admitted, to having no friends. And 32% admit to not having a good friend. 61% of Americans are miserably lonely, according to the UCLA metric. And we have plenty of studies to suggest that these are mostly men. I mean, this is a serious issue that society as a whole needs to take more serious. But why exactly is this happening? What factors are involved? In an article called "Male Virginity is Rising, but Not for the Reasons Incels Claim," they point out, the writers, point out that social scientists attribute this to the fact that not as many people are getting married, and if they do, they're getting married way later on in life. But this just leaves us with more questions. Why aren't people getting married? And many people might also say mainstream articles like this are ignoring a few uncomfortable truths that also play a big impact. But what I'm going to try to show you is that none of these things are necessarily the right answer. And it's not even that they coexist, but they reinforce each other. A foundation of this issue that I don't see being discussed very much is an issue of demographics. A healthy population pyramid looks like a pyramid. People keep on sprouting. There's more young people than old people. Take sub-Saharan Africa, for example. Healthy birth rate, there's a lot of youngins. Now change it to the US, Canada, lots of westernized countries. These places, it's starting to reverse. There's a bunch of old fucks, pretty much is what I'm saying. It might not look terrible immediately, but there's a whole lot of problems that stem from this and the declining birth rate. If you look at the average age of countries, it's like 40. In the US, in Canada, in the UK, the average age is 40. Whereas people a few generations ago, the baby boomers, most other people, when they were growing up, were their age. When they were young, most people were young. As a Zoomer, this will seem very foreign, because most people, if you go outside, are old. It depends on the area, but for a lot of areas in the United States, it's just so many old, saggy fucks. Make no mistake, these demographics very much have an impact on loneliness, and male loneliness specifically. In this age bracket we're looking at, 18 to 29, men already outnumber women. But if you look at the dating market, this difference is even worse. This is for many reasons we'll get into more later, but where the hoes at is a very salient question I mean, they're getting kind of hard to find. I'm beginning to think they're hiding in the most unsuspecting places. Like maybe I'll go to a Magic the Gathering tournament and just see a bunch of bitches there. Anything's possible at this point. If we look back at this Pew Research study, the age bracket where men and women's single rates are the same is when men are 18 to 29 and women are 65 plus. So what are all these young bucks just supposed to So what, are all these young bucks just supposed to start gilf hunting? I mean, goodness gracious, shout out to all my cougar crusaders, but this is just not dignified. I mean, hey man, looking at the raw data, if you want a GF, you better just go down to Sandpiper Crossing. That's where all the hoes at. I mean, it might be the move if you're not going to turn into a woman, just start going after lonely old women, and all their cats are going to be licking your toes while you're trying to No, imagine you're hitting it from the back, and then that bitch just passes away. Oh, Gertrude. So yeah, the ratio is just not chill. There's a lot of old people in general, and not that many young people. And this does increase male loneliness because older men, which there are a lot more of, are able to date down in terms of age, which leaves a lot of young dudes like wondering what to do, and the old women who the old men would be pairing up with, they're also lonely, so that's what leads to that. There's also this thing where a whole lot of women are identifying as LGBTQ, and you know, some people might say a lot of this is they're just making it up or virtue signaling, and maybe that's part of it. I can't know for sure, but I also think it's possible for many reasons these women just don't want to date most men. But getting back to loneliness in general, I know a lot of kids, they grow up in a neighborhood where there's barely any other kids. In the boomer era, this was unheard of. You grew up and there were all these kids around you. But now you can grow up in a neighborhood and it's just a bunch of old fuck. I'll tell you what happened to me. Growing up, I wasn't really impacted by this. I grew up in sort of a black neighborhood. It wasn't very atomized.
It's almost like we have an imposter among us.
On my block, there was a good amount of kids I was friends with. I would play football with the kids across the street. There was this kid, I'm not going to say his real name. His name was DeMarcus.
Marcus, go to Marcus, go to Marcus.
One time, I can't remember the details, but we were out in the backyard standing by the grill, and got the idea to he was like, yo, put your hands in my pants and start rubbing my balls. He didn't say it like that. We were children. And even back then as a child, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, isn't this kind of weird, dude? But he was like, nah, man, it's not weird at all. It'll feel good. Trust me. So eventually it escalated. I did it to him. He did it to me. And then we started doing it at the same time. So both of our hands are in our boxers rubbing each other's sweaty balls. And then my dad walks out of the house to go put some burgers on the grill. He looks and he just sees us rubbing each other's balls. He doesn't say a word. He puts them on the grill and goes back inside. So yeah, that happened. This is a completely true story. But here's the thing. Hey, that's probably can't happen in 2022. It's a different age. These kids are just growing up with all old people. Imagine if he was 50 years older. That would make the story pretty fucked up. But we were just kids, you know, it's fine. But in high school, I moved out of the city where I was living and into the suburbs, and I didn't know any of my neighbors after that, and there were barely any kids. It was just like this suburban community right off the freeway, and it's just a bunch of old fucks. And this is where we really get into the nitty gritty, the atomization. The people are just less connected. There's this disillusion of community. If you read a book called Bowling Alone, this was written all the way in 2000. The author talks about social capital, the sort of amount and quality of relationships that you have that help you get through tough times. And he brings up a whole lot of data suggesting that social capital is overall declining pretty fast. All the way back in 2000, he was analyzing this stuff. And I'm telling you, all these things are connected. The demographics, marrying older. When you marry older, you have less kids. So there's this the setup of the family now. You have 4 grandparents, 2 parents, and 1 kid, an only child. And this is just an atomized, lonely person waiting to happen. It's a nuclear family, but it's not a good extended family with a lot of relationships you could branch off to. They grow up in a neighborhood. There's not a lot of people their age. The amount of Zoomers that actually have a good social circle now is definitely the minority at this point in time, because what is considered a friend or a community it's really not like a Discord or like a group of people who play some game on Xbox Live. Like, these people aren't really there for you. They're not really your friends. I am atomized. Most Zoomers are atomized. I have a few friends, but they're all part of different groups that don't overlap with each other. I don't have a strong social circle. The internet is very much a large contributor to this problem of, Zoomers not having good social circles, because now kids who are not popular, losers you could say, but you don't even have to be a complete loser. You just have different interests, or you're not a super popular kid. Now you could just go on the internet and connect with other people like you without actually having to form a strong community in real life. So all these people are inside instead of really connecting with each other. And the more time you spend on the internet, these interests get more and more niche to where you can't connect with people in the real world anymore. Where previously these people would find their own communities and connections in real life back in the days before the internet. But it's also true that back in those days there were more young people in general. So, that's what I'm saying. There's a whole lot of issues compounding here, and they reinforce each other. There's not a lot of young people in general, so they're going to connect with the internet. And all these black pill guys are talking about height, jawline, gonial angle, canst thou tilt, trying to improve your looks, focusing heavy on that. And it does matter, but it only really applies now because of these issues of decreased social circle and atomization. Because what happens is, now that you don't have a strong social circle that will connect you with other people, you're forced to rely on means of dating where this stuff really is all that matters, like online dating or bars and nightclubs, which is the vast majority of how couples meet nowadays, which by extension does make the black pill real. The ways people meet, looks is pretty much all that matters. But it doesn't apply to everybody. There are communities where all this lookism stuff really doesn't matter. Hispanics are almost completely immune to the black pill. Mexican people are all 5'4" and they have wives and kids. They're not impacted by this stuff because they don't have to play in this matrix game that you're playing in. Because a lot of them have healthy communities. You see them out in the park. They got their quinceañeras. They all date each other. It works out. But you can't play that game, white boy. I think honestly this does explain why a lot of white people are incels. Atomization, it sort of impacts their culture a lot more, with these 4 grandparents, 2 parents, 1 kid, and then they send this kid off to college where they leave their hometown and now they're not connected with any of these people they grew up with. But it is true that 3/4 of couples meet in these environments, so by extension it does make this lookism stuff pretty real, because in these environments it's all that matters. So getting back to why we're marrying later, it's also just what our culture is promoting. Go to school, get your PhD first, get a good job first, and then settle down with somebody. It's no surprise that a lot of lonely men are going into these fields in college and failing to do them, and also men who are working in the labor force are also dropping out, because you need a relationship and a family to really keep on working that hard. If you're going to have a 9 to 5, you need a family. You do it for your family. If you're just have a 9 to 5 and you go back to an apartment all alone, there's actually no point. If you live a completely normal life, your relationships are what makes it worth it, are what makes it special. Relationships are always unique and special. That is how you create an impact through your personal life and the people you know, your social circle. If you don't have that, you're actually just a cog in the machine. But speaking of that, getting back to why people are getting married older and getting married less, the economy plays a huge factor. A lot of guys are failing to launch, failing to become adults, get their own house, and obviously get their own family. People might say it's because they're whacking off too much, they're playing video games. Sure, that could be a part of it, but it's also incredibly expensive to buy a house. People can't have kids because they can't afford to have kids financially. It's no surprise that a proportionately large amount of these unmarried men live with their parents. But it's not like if you're an atomized single man and you buy a house, it'll work for you. And this, of course, reinforces itself. Men are looking to buy houses and women are looking to buy houses instead of them doing it together as a unit, as a family. They're doing it individually, which of course raises the demand. Now shit's way more expensive. Dating in general is expensive. Let me just get something off my chest. All these hoes want boba tea. Boba tea is $11 per cup. I mean, it's really not worth it. It's not even that good. I don't even know if these girls like boba. It's just like a psyop to get dudes to pay $12 for a fucking cold drink. But yeah, when we look at this data, it's a macro problem. It might not impact you personally on a micro level. It's not like this objective law where it impacts everybody the same and you're boned if you don't have these objective characteristics. After looking at all of it, you might not really be at fault, but you still are responsible for your situation. First thing I'll say is that school is important. School is one of the places with these demographics now. It's one of the only places where you will be with a lot of other people your age. You will be with most other people your age. And if you made friends in school, it's important to keep in touch with them after high school. Reach out. That, you might have a few people you're like, I don't really want to reach out. It's been a while. It's been weird. They might not like to hear from me. Maybe they won't. Whatever. Just reach out. I'm far from having peaked in high school, but what happens to a lot of guys, even if they are late bloomers, is their social life low-key does peak in school, because after that, they don't have any environments to meet a lot of young people. If you're meeting people, consistent exposure is very important. That's why this whole idea of like you're just gonna randomly one day go out and meet someone, it doesn't really make sense, because people grow on each other. The way people meet and form good relationships is through consistent exposure. So you have to go outside of your house to certain places. You have to become a frequent at certain places consistently. And not really like a supermarket or a gym. These aren't social enough environments. Maybe an MMA gym would work, a church. How brutal this is does vary kind of a lot depending on the area you live in. It matters a lot, but it's a hard decision to say to move, because if you have family and friend connections, I wouldn't recommend moving. A lot of guys talk about going overseas where it's easier. It's like, you don't speak that language. Maybe for a week if you're just trying to get your rocks off, but then that's not really going to solve your issue. There's also this internet trap of falling into this thing where you only have weird hobbies about like indie gaming or some obscure ideologies. So I would just say, like, be aware of your hobbies and maybe try, if you see yourself going down that road, be like, maybe try to get into some more like normie shit. I mean, yeah, area matters a lot. I'm thinking about going somewhere myself. Wait, where'd the skeleton go? What the fuck? When did he get over there? What? What is he pointing at? Ohio? No. No, please. Not Ohio. Anywhere but Ohio. Please. Please.